Okay, in this video, I'm re-recording my previous one since I fixed my microphone quality. This video, this will be the third time I've recorded over it, so it should be a nice, smooth selling video. Pretty easy to cover. So in this video, we're going to throw out the theory that God always existed, and we're gonna prove how he always existed. So anytime you're looking up or going to go into the theory of God, you're gonna always have a basic principality of what you can attribute what you would expect a God to be. Alright, so what would we expect God to be? So the on the top of my list, what I attribute God to having to be is one, always existing, and two, I'm going to give everybody a minute to think about it. What else would be a good quality or principle or ability that God would be able to do, or classify him, sets him above the rest? What else? Okay, so always existing. So that also means he's indestructible, basically, because if you always exist, you're basically, obviously, not being destroyed when you continue to keep existing. So we basically just kind of expect that to just be a form of indestructibility, to always exist. And plus, he's smart enough to not getting into any trouble where he may get destroyed. So he rules over any sort of danger of not existing, which is the biggest problem of what would cause anything to not exist, is something to be destroyed. So it appears as though he's indestructible, eternal, always going to exist, always has existed. And I'm going to go over that theory. Another thing that's big on my list is knows everything. That's one of the first thing I think everybody thinks of when they think about God is, oh man, he must know everything, right? Yes, that's exactly what it means. Now we need to get into answering the question of, can we prove that somebody or something can always exist, and can we prove that somebody or something can know everything? Because if it's possible and we get some sort of formula to balance the equation to make sense of, oh, okay, well then that's how he always existed. Oh, that's how he knows everything. Then it would make more sense of, oh, how is there an all-powerful being? And my argument behind how there's a God is, it's just the way it is. It's the same thing as, how was there always space, right? Because it was just always there. It always had to be there, and that's the only way anything could ever exist. So my argument is there has to be a God, and I'm going to explain why there has to be a God. Because he basically is the creator of everything. So if it wasn't for him, there would be nothing, absolutely nothing but just space itself. But no one will ever know that there's space if nobody knows about it. So he was the only one who ever knew about space, since he was the only one who ever always existed. Now I'm going to explain how he always existed, and how he knows everything, because that's, I think, the more interesting part of the question and the puzzle is how he knows everything, which is, I think, cool. Because I basically discovered, well, he's basically a computer because that's how he always existed and that's how he knows everything. But let me explain how he knows everything because that's not the only way he knows everything. So he's basically an eternal computer. But when I say he's a computer, it's potentially just having a brain. Having that ability to make decisions, choices. Same with you. Your mind, your brain is a computer because that's what he specializes in is computing things. How do you think he knows everything? Is because he specializes in computing and AI, artificial intelligence. That's a form of artificial intelligence when you know everything, and I'm going to explain. It's because he's all powerful. So you're basically looking at a computer that's all powerful. So you're looking at an ultra powerful AI robot, almost like a Terminator, beyond like the Liquid Terminator, because he's beyond eternal, and he's all powerful. He knows everything. He always existed. Um, Now the bigger question is, how is he all powerful? How did he always exist? That's a question that you can't really quite answer because there isn't really quite an answer. Other than that's just the way things are. It's the same thing as kind of asking, well, why is the distance of the moon the distance of the moon? Well, there isn't very much other explanation beyond why something is something when it comes down to a certain point. It's just the way it is. It's in the same thing. Oh, why is the moon appear white? I mean, we're just roughly saying because we're obviously it doesn't appear to be green. It doesn't appear to be purple, right? So we're just roughly saying why did well, it's just the way things are. If you can always get some sort of small explanation, but when it does come down to it, you're always going to reach a point where if that's just the way it is, that's just the way it is. And it's the same thing as asking why did you wake up at whatever time you woke up. Sometimes there isn't much explanation behind why you woke up at the time you woke up besides, oh, maybe you decided that, or maybe that's on your sleep schedule, or whatever. There's only a limited amount of why is it that way aside from, well, that's just what was planned or the way it is. So now, how did he always exist and how does he know everything? It's just the way it is. It's his ability. It's his he has that capability. If you have that capability, you're gonna embrace your capabilities and use your capabilities. So why would he not? If he can know everything and always exist, why would he not want to always exist? So basically, here's what I'm going to explain. So how can we prove that he always exists? Most people argue that somebody or something cannot always exist, but we already know that space itself always existed. So therefore, we already know that it's possible for something to always exist. Oh, let me use a darker color. So therefore, if that's possible, the biggest reason why we were against God always existing is we didn't understand that something can't always exist. But now we are observing and we see it and we know it's possible. Space always existed. Okay, well, space always existed. We already know of the possibility of things existing forever and always existing. So there is a possibility that God always existed, and basically it's just comes down to that circumstance of if he was a part of always existing and did he always exist. And that's basically my argument is he had to have always existed because it's the only way anything can exist because I'm going to prove how he knows everything is basically he he knows everything there are a couple ways he could know everything. So that's another reason why most people are against there being a God is, oh, it's not possible to know everything. Well, that's a good argument. That's very unlikely and unreasonable. So now we start trying to take on the context of, well, is there some sort of explanation, a formula? How can it be possible to know everything? All right, well, my argument is, well, the equation can be balanced um, because we know that he always existed. So now we're taking on the argument that he always existed, and we don't think that he just spontaneously just always knew everything. But now what I realize is that he probably just figured everything out. So my argument is that's his job, that's his nature, that's his ability, that's just what he knows how to do. So since he's always known how to figure everything out, that's all he's ever done. So that's why no one's ever really knows who God is or has met him yet, because dude, he's eternal. All right, we're talking infinite amounts of years for him is like the blink of an eye, milliseconds, because he's a computer. That's how things are for a computer. Quadrillions and quadrillions of years can go by for a computer, and then it doesn't even matter for a computer because it's computers are still processing and doing whatever they're doing. And that's all he's ever done was figure everything out. Why was he always figuring everything out? Because he knew that he was going to be able to figure everything out. He wouldn't have just sat there figuring everything out if he wasn't able to do it and if he wasn't able to start organizing it. So obviously he always existed and he had infinite amounts of power, infinite amounts of time. So that's how he figured everything out, because he had infinite amounts of time. So my argument of how he knows everything is because he just, for infinite amounts of time, always figured everything out. So we're talking any number you come up with. It doesn't matter. He was always computing and simulating and figuring more. There's not a point you can reach of where he wasn't running simulations and figuring, because he always was able to do that. Because that's the only way anything can exist is if somebody has that much supreme power. You have to be all powerful for anything to exist. So my argument is if there isn't somebody who's all powerful and who doesn't figure everything out, well then nothing will always, there will never be anything that ever exists. So the only thing that would ever exist is pure nothing. Maybe space itself, which is what nothing is infinite amounts of space, infinite amounts of nothing. So God is the ruler over all the infinite amounts of space, because he always existed within space. So he always ruled over space. So space is like his canvas. It's basically like his paper. And where else would he create anything or put anything if he didn't have infinite amounts of space? So it's basically like a computer. He's always had infinite amounts of space to put everything. So we're basically at the mercy of God for anything to exist, because the way it works, it was what I realized, is when you go back to the Big Bang, what you're looking at is 13 billion years ago. God figured everything out. So that's the whole illusion why everyone can't understand. How does he just know everything? And that's how he knows everything, is because he always existed. So before he created anything, it was always just him in space itself. So we always just existed inside infinite amounts of space. Because we know that. That's all that we know of. There was always infinite amounts of space. So, for infinite amounts of time, God was always figuring everything out. And that's the only way he figured everything out is because he had infinite amounts of time. So he had forever, and that's the only way you can know everything is it takes forever. It literally it takes infinite amounts of time to know everything. It's the only way to balance the equation. So therefore, he's 13 billion years ago. God figured everything out. So what happened is 13 billion years ago, up until that point, prior to that, nothing existed because that's what happened at the Big Bang. Is we seen he created everything. So 13 billion years ago, he says, "Okay, I am the all-powerful God. I've always existed. I figured everything out. I know everything." And everyone was so confused. Oh, it's not possible for him to always exist. Oh, it's not possible for him to know everything. And now it's finally being revealed how he knows everything and that he does know everything. So, lo and behold, he actually does know everything, but that's only because he always existed. So, literally, come up with any ludicrous number. We're talking as ludicrous of a number as you want to come up with. We're talking 100 quadrillion, bazillion, bazillion times 1 bazillion years ago. He was still figuring everything out. So, all you need to basically realize is a computer basically loading software or installing information or writing down information, figuring out a math problem, because that's a better way to look at it. So for infinite amounts of time, he was always solving equations in his mind, because it's the same thing as him writing it down is when he's solving it in his mind, because he's a computer. Because when he's solving it in his mind, it's getting written into his hard drive. He's learning and changing, because God himself always existed, and God himself always was able to keep changing his mind. So every time he kept learning and writing down more and more information and learning more things, of course he learns more information way faster than most normal people, because he's just an all-powerful being. So he potentially was able to simulate billions and billions of simulations per second. It made it look easy, but it's just he is all powerful. And so anyway, my argument is 13 billion years ago, he figured everything out, and it took him forever. And then basically he had forever, and then that proves that he had forever is that mark there at 13 billion years ago. So he comes from infinity, and that's where everybody doesn't understand. Is like, oh, what happens if somebody comes from infinity? Well, that's what happens if you come from infinity. Is automatic. You're always gonna pop into the picture or looking like you just popped out of nowhere. But you've in reality he's always been there, which is why everyone is so confused. It's like, how were you always there? Well, that's the only way it could have been. And he was figuring everything out, and that's how he knows it. And thank God he figured everything out, because that's just how he was. Is he expected that he was gonna be able to figure everything out, because you just know what you can do. Like, if you are a person who can build a house, you just kind of expect, oh, I'm going to be able to get this done in a few months or whatever time frame, because you just know, like, oh, I have that ability, because all I have to do is this, and all I have to do is that, and as soon as I do this, and as soon as I do that, then I'm going to know this, and then it's going to be done. So another way to know everything is, of course, simulate all possibilities. So that's how he basically figured everything out, is not only just knowing every combination of the dice possible, is knowing every variation of it. So yeah, that's some all-powerful stuff right there. That's beyond quantum computers. But that's how he. And when you're dealing with forever, it doesn't matter how long it takes to figure everything out, as long as it gets done. It because in all reality, it took them forever to figure everything out, but it was still worth it. I mean, because, you know, infinite amounts of time. I mean, we're talking infinite amounts of time to figure everything out, which is not possible for anybody but God Himself. Because you have to always exist and you have to calculate everything for infinite amounts of time. So, anyway, that's all He's ever done. So, anyway, He's the ruler of over the dead. Because that's what space is. Nothing. That's all dead. Dead space. Nothing. So, nothing always existed. Everything was always dead. Nothing. The only thing that ever existed was God Himself until He created everything, because He had to figure everything out, how to create everything. Well, maybe not just that. Maybe it was His own personal preference that He wanted to know everything, because He could know everything. So maybe He didn't have to know everything, and He still would have known enough to create everything, but He had forever, so why not? Why not figure everything out if He already has forever to figure everything out? So He took forever. So that's what another very interesting thing to keep in mind is you and me, we were dead for infinite amounts of time. So infinite amounts of time ago, you can't put a number on how long ago we were dead for. We were dead for infinite forever. We were forever dead. Because he rules over infinity, rules over forever. So He was the only thing that ever existed. Everything was always dead until He created anything and everything. So now that we understand what being dead is, not existing, knowing that you've been dead forever, not existed forever, you shouldn't feel so naked of, oh, what is it going to be like when I die? Well, that's what happens if you die, is you just go back to nothing. You don't exist. And then that's what He's trying to show everybody, is everybody has to be respectful of nature, because it's dangerous and easy for anything and everybody to die if He's not here watching over everything. Because He's the only reason anything exists and isn't going to die. Because He can protect everything from dying. But everybody wanted their own space and everybody wanted God to leave everybody alone and everything alone. And now we learned our lesson of why that's stupid. Like, it's stupid to have God leave everything alone, because everything is going to die. Because He's the only one who can take care and do everything. Who else is going to take care of the whole universe and make sure it stays wound up and in tune? That's what happens if God stops doing everything, is that eventually it's going to all die. So now we know, oh shit, we don't want God to leave us alone. We don't want God to leave everything alone and give us our own space. Because everything's going to die. So now, guess what? We're never going to forget, how stupid it is for Him to leave everybody alone. Give everybody their own space. So we're never going to take on that argument of, hey, leave us alone, give us our own space, right? Because now we know, oh shit, man, if we tell Him to give us our own space, we are unable to straighten everything out. We're unable to sustain everything. So it's not in our interest to have Him leave everybody alone. So guess what? That's another thing. Never again. He's never going to be leaving everything alone. Because everybody learns their lesson. Everyone's going to know, oh, God, don't leave us. We know that if you leave us alone down here, we're all going to die. And we don't want that. And that's what He wants to make sure everybody... Because it's based on free will. If everybody wants Him to leave everything alone, shit, he'll leave everything alone. No big deal. Why does it matter to him? He's always going to exist. Us, we're gonna fucking die if he doesn't take care of everything and keep everything fucking straight. So now, guess what? We learned, oh shit, and we're still learning. Cuz we thought we were responsible. Oh, yeah, we're not gonna fucking die if God leaves us alone. And sure enough, as soon as he leaves everything alone, everything starts fucking dying. That's the very first thing that happens. The very first thing that happens as soon as he leaves everything alone is everything begins to die. Why do you think everything begins to die when he leaves everything alone? Because he created it like that. He is not having it. He is not having it because he knows everything that's going on. He's not going to allow for people to go creating all these wars, killing people, raping people, murdering people, and then not cutting everybody off, saying, hey, this is not going to happen. I'm not allowing this. I'm turning my back away from this. So he already knows. Guess what? The very first thing that happens as soon as I turn my back away from everything and I leave you guys alone and you guys think you're going to be responsible is everyone's going to get killed and die. Why? Because conflicts happen. Accidents happen. Mankind does not have that capability to keep itself sustained because we're too conflictive. And that's what creates death. Why he had to make sure everything dies. Because he knows. He knows that I'm not having this. I know that the type of behavior that's going on. And during these circumstances, everything will die, period. Because he knows that it will happen. And it's going to happen. And we saw that it did happen. That there's no way to stop it from happening. And we don't need another chance on trying to argue with him saying, hey, we can be responsible. We'll stop fighting each other. We'll stop killing each other. Because we know that that's not where it leads. We know that that's not where it's going to go. Because it's always going to lead to a black hole. Everyone's going to fucking die. Period. That's all he wanted everybody to know. And now, whether or not you opened your eyes and see it for yourself, I feel sorry for you if you don't see it for yourself and realize that we have no chance of living in the nature of that we live under without God, straightening everything out, taking rulership over everything. Because he's going to be the one who makes sure everything stays alive. Because he knows everything. As long as he knows everything's safe, fine, he'll make sure everything stays alive. If he knows everything isn't going to be safe, he's going to make sure nothing stays alive. Because it's not safe to keep things alive if it's dangerous. Why do you think he had to make sure everything is dying if it's not safe? Because if it's not safe, it has to die. Because he can't allow for something to be destroyed and then just still be alive. Because he knows everything. And he knows that, hey, if something has been destroyed, then it has to go back to nothing. It has to die. Same thing for, like, if you put a bullet, if you shoot somebody in the head, chances are, more likely than not, they're gonna die because it's been destroyed. And that's part of what he knows. He knows that people are doing it and are going to do it. And as long as he knows that anybody is going to do that, it has to die. It has to be put to rest. How can he allow for somebody to stay alive if they're being dismantled, if their body gets chopped in half or their head gets chopped off? How's he going to prolong that agony and pain? That's why he has to create pain so that everybody learns oh, I'm not going to do that because that's painful, that's harmful, that's something I shouldn't do. So, anyway, now everybody is learning and figuring out, okay, well, if God isn't here to put his word in and tell everybody, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, then nothing is going to be able to grow. Obviously, he is the source of anything being able to exist because he's the only one who's always existed. So if we're going to learn to always exist, we have to learn from the one who always did exist. And that's where he's drawn the line is like guess what? You guys cannot always exist if you guys are destroying each other and killing each other. That's the whole concept of what everyone's finally learning is like, oh, okay, that makes sense. If somebody kills something, it dies. There's got to be a consequence, punishment. So that's why he's got to only allow for it to happen one time, because after everybody learns their lesson and says, oh yeah, we don't want anything to die, because now we know, like, oh, he has to create everything, so why would we want anything to die? So when everyone starts learning, okay, I'll listen to God, and I won't fight. And that's the biggest reason why we weren't listening to God, is we were fighting with him. That's what happens when you fight. When you fight with somebody, you die. It's dangerous to fight with people. So when you're fighting with God, he's going to have to leave you alone, because that's what happens. He's not going to fight, if you are taking on the argument that you're safe by yourself and you can take care of yourself and you don't need him, by all means, he's going to leave you alone. Why do you think he left everybody alone? Is because he knows that everybody feels, oh, I'm safe, I can take care of myself, I don't need anybody. And now we know how stupid it is to, because that's why you don't want to be fighting with God. And that's why we're learning, oh, God, I'm not going to be fighting with God ever again. And that's what we did. We fought with him. We argued. We said, hey, God, it is safe to leave us alone. We are going to be responsible. We aren't going to destroy each other. We're not going to fight. We're not going to... And he said, fine. You guys think that you guys are so responsible and you guys think you know everything? Go. Go learn the hard way. Of course he knew everyone was going to get killed. Of course he knew everyone was going to fucking die. And everyone was going to regret turning their back and fighting against his word of being left alone. But how else is anybody going to learn if they don't understand why somebody is saying, hey, no, I refuse to leave you alone, but guess what? He can only refuse to leave everybody alone until we fight against it. And that's what happened with the whole Adam and Eve and Lucifer's. Everyone was fighting against it. Like, hey, leave us the fuck alone. Give us our own space. And guess what? There comes a point where if they're fighting over it and that's what everyone's fighting about, he's not fighting. If that's what everybody wants, that's what everybody gets. So, yeah, I hope you guys are happy listening to stupid Lucifer, letting him trick everybody that it was such a good fucking idea to leave everything alone. Because, yeah, Lucifer's the biggest reason why everybody got so screwed over with God leaving everything alone, is he's fighting. What do you think he's fighting? What do you think the whole fight is all about? Lucifer's been fighting God and arguing to give everybody their own space and leave everybody the fuck alone this entire time. And why do you think that God ain't fighting it? He's like, guess what? If everyone thinks that Lucifer is so fucking smart And if they think he isn't gonna fucking destroy everything, by all means, I'm leaving your asses alone with him because that's what you guys want. You guys wanted to be left alone with Lucifer because you guys wanted to start a goddamn fight. And yeah, the thing about Lucifer is he's another powerful being like the creator because the creator made him. So he has eternal life. So he's different than everybody else. So why do you think he didn't give a shit that he started a fight with God? Because hell, nothing's really going to happen to him. He's eternal. Right? So he's all like, yeah, leave everybody alone. Fuck it. I'll show everybody. I'll keep everybody safe. So everybody trusted Lucifer. Was like, oh yeah, you know what? Why would God create Lucifer if he wasn't trustworthy, if he didn't know what he was talking about? So Lucifer's like, guys, I will keep everything safe. I know exactly what I'm doing. Let's just fucking have them give us our own space. Fuck this. So he started the whole war. Boom. Got everybody their own goddamn space. And the only reason he wanted to get everybody alone was because he was trying to create a debt and bankrupt everybody and steal everybody's soul. Because when you steal somebody's soul, that means that you bankrupt them. That means that they owe you everything. That was the only reason he wanted to get everybody alone. So everybody thought it was a whole camping trip. They were tricked by Lucifer to begin with because he was like, hey guys, he was all making it out to be something completely different. He was making it out like no one was going to get hurt and it wasn't going to be any big deal. And it was just going to be like a camping trip. Oh, we're just going to be in the backyard. So behind everybody's back, everybody's thinking, oh yeah, it's going to be harmless fun. Lucifer's trustworthy. What would Lucifer ever try to do, or why would he ever try to hurt anybody? So of course they were tricked by him. So everyone had to learn the hard way. Of course God knew that Lucifer was a fucking vigilante and a fucking criminal. But how else is anybody going to learn unless he turns his back on it and lets everybody learn their lesson? Because now even Lucifer's going to learn his lesson. Because whoever does the most gets the most. So Lucifer's already been doing the most to get himself in the most trouble. So he's already going to be getting in the most trouble. So it's not like it doesn't matter, because everything down here is going to matter. So Lucifer's foremost in the most trouble because he's the whole reason everybody got shafted and fucked into all this madness. So anyway, yeah, what's gonna happen is Lucifer is gonna be punished because yeah, he was basically trying to bankrupt everybody, because if he would have collected everybody as a debt, he could have turned it over to God and then, just been talking business, because that's his business. Because God doesn't get involved in business if it's not his business, and Lucifer knows that, so he's crafty. He's been trying to do it in a way of where he can get away with it. So in most of his simulations, we're talking thousands and infinite amounts of these simulations, of course, Lucifer gets away with it because it's easy to put people into debt and make them owe. And if somebody owes somebody, well, then it's just the way it is. If they owe, they owe. So ignorance is what creates debt. So that's how Lucifer's going into debt, is because I'm sitting here revealing the truth of how this is all working, and ignorance creates debt. Is because if he ignores of what's happening and what's going to happen, that he'll have to owe. So that was the whole purpose of what God wants, is that he needed to make sure Lucifer's put into debt. So he needs to make sure that Lucifer is ignoring something that's, going to put him into debt. And ignoring what I'm telling him is going to put him into more debt than he can possibly imagine. It'll be his worst nightmare to ignore my warnings, because my warnings are basically warning, like, how God is reversing what Lucifer is doing, because Lucifer was putting everybody into endless amounts of debt. So, of course, the only way to stop Lucifer is if God puts Lucifer into infinite amounts of debt. So, God had to steal Lucifer's soul in order to stop him. So, now that God basically stole Lucifer's soul, and Lucifer owes God now, because the way it works is the whole argument was Lucifer was trying to start the fight of, okay, well, let's try to figure out if God knows everything or not, because he's going to try to come up with a problem that no one would be able to solve. And so he was like, if no one can solve this problem, we know that he's not God. And he was all saying, oh, I guarantee you no one will be able to solve this problem. Um, and then no one really knew what the problem was, because he has to keep it a secret, and he's got to try to make it secret because he's got to see if God can try to figure it out. So, of course, lo and behold, God figured it out and knew about it. So the whole thing of the problem of Lucifer was going to create was bankrupting everybody and stealing everybody's soul. Because if you do it fairly, to where they owe you fairly and sign it over fairly, well, if they owe you, then they owe you, and it goes down to the. So anyway, that's how this all works. Is the deal between Lucifer and God was, if God knew everything, well, then he gets everything. Lucifer owes him everything. If he can solve the problem, if he can figure out what the problem is, because Lucifer was supposed to come up with a problem that no one was supposed to be able to figure out or solve. So God was like, sure, I can solve the problem. I'll figure out the goddamn problem. No big deal, because I know everything. Of course he knows everything. Of course he figured out the fucking problem. Of course he stole his fucking soul. Of course he fucking put him into endless amounts of debt. Of course he fucking punished his ass. Of course he just fucking vanquished his shit, melted his ass like a volcano. Because that's if God wouldn't have figured out what the problem was or what Lucifer was going to do, then Lucifer would have been able to say, hey, you owe me because you didn't figure out what the problem was, so now you owe me everything. So that was what the deal is. It's like, okay, well, if God figures everything out, Lucifer owes God everything. If Lucifer figures everything out, well, then God owes Lucifer everything. So supposedly Lucifer figured everything out, and he was gonna own everybody and everything. And as soon as he owned everybody and everything, he was just gonna turn it over as a debt and collect it as, all right, well, pay me what you owe me. And that's why he's known as the demon, and a vigilante of, going after, endless amounts of punishment, is because ignorance creates debt. So he creates debt. He wants people to owe him. So his whole thing is he wants people to owe him as much as possible. The more you can owe him, the more, the better for him. That's what he wants. So God did the same thing, since that's what Lucifer wanted, was everybody to owe him, because he wanted to be the richest person in the world, since he knew that whoever owns all the money can rule over everything and make all the choices. God did the same thing, and then he just bankrupted them, because no one was supposed to figure it out. No one was supposed to know. But now that I know, and I'm revealing, hey, Lucifer's down here bankrupting everybody, now he's screwed, because the only way he can bankrupt everybody is if nobody knows about it. That's how he bankrupts everybody, is they're ignorant to it. Ignorance creates debt. Ignorance is bliss if nobody knows about it. So he can't create debt if somebody knows about it. So with me, he can't create debt. And remember, he has to create infinite amounts of debt, endless amounts of debt. So if he cannot bankrupt everybody and trick everybody, then he will not win. Why do you think everybody's going bankrupt and losing all their money? And it's so much easier to lose all your money than make anything, because he has to bankrupt everybody and everything, because only if he owns everything can he collect his ownership over what he owns. Like, he'll be like, oh, I have 100 quadrillion trillion dollars and I want to own 90% of space out here, or whatever the fuck he's. But now Lucifer owes debt because ignorance creates debt. And if you ignore something, then you owe. And so now God is using me to put him into debt, because when I'm warning, like, hey, dude, God is putting you into debt, and he's been putting you into debt this whole time. Now he's getting fair warning. The only reason the Creator didn't do it in a different manner, and suppose the Creator would have warned him, hey, if you do this, I will bankrupt you and you'll be punished eternally. That's the only reason he didn't warn him and tell him, is because ignorance creates debt. Is if God were to say, hey, if you do this, you're going to be punished forever, then he would owe more. So he couldn't, because it would have been too much punishment. So now he's getting his second chance of where he's, because in the altered simulation, he failed to understand the consequences, and then he was punished for it. And then that's the problem, because if God can prevent something from happening, if it doesn't have to happen, he'll make sure that it doesn't have to happen. So God never said, hey, don't do this, because if he would have said, hey, don't do this, and then you still go do it because ignorance creates debt, you're going to be punished. So he didn't warn him prior. He didn't give him very much warning, because he just gave everybody that fair argument and that fair fight. It was like, you know what, I'm dropping it. You guys want to fight about it, I'm turning my back on it, no big deal. I already have everything figured out. I already know what's going to happen. You guys go learn your lesson, and then you guys are going to see what's going to happen. And now we saw what happened. So Lucifer got his ass in some serious fucking trouble. Because now it's coming down to me, because in the prior simulations, if God were to warn anybody, like, hey, you can't do this, boom, punishment will be set, and it cannot be reversed, because ignorance creates debt. So now he's actually getting a fair chance to straighten out and to stop, because now it's the only fair chance that God is willing to accept. So we don't know what Lucifer's going to decide or choose, if he's willing to go into infinite amounts of debt, or if he is going to realize, hey, this isn't worth it to go be punished forever for something that's not worth it, that's stupid. So what I think is Lucifer's probably not going to want to fight the argument anymore, since he knows, hey, it's not worth it. Since now he knows, like, hey, man, he can take a step back and look at the other simulations, and he'll know, like, man, those simulations lead to nowhere, and it's not going to help anything, and it's not going to do anything. So he'll probably learn his lesson, because now I can warn, because it goes down to my warning, because now I can throw the warning out, like, hey, this cannot go on, the people putting people into debt, making people owe each other. Because if it goes down to a whole battle and a game of, oh, you owe me this, you owe me that, who's going to stop God from winning that game, winning that battle, when we already know he's all powerful and he can always be one step ahead of everybody? So there's no point in starting this whole fucking war on who can make more money than everybody, because we already know that God can make more money than everybody. So there's no point. Lucifer, why did he even try it? Why did he even try to go make more money than God, when he already knew that God could make fucking more goddamn money than Lucifer could make fucking with his fucking eyes closed. Because Lucifer's a stupid fucking idiot. So now we know how God makes his money. Is he bankrupts motherfuckers, and he makes sure that you look dumb as shit, and he makes sure that you lose respect. So the best weapon against somebody is to make sure that people lose respect for him. So you should be losing respect towards Lucifer the more that you learn more about his nature and what he's doing. Because that's all God wants, is for everybody to lose respect for Lucifer. Oh man, I have no respect for that guy because he's stupid. He says he knows something when he doesn't, and he's going behind everybody's back because all he wants to do is make all the money for himself. Because if he's making the money for himself, that's all he gives a fuck about. Now everybody's figuring that out, and now we're lucky that God was one step ahead of him and was sitting there laughing in front of Lucifer's face like, oh, you think you're going to bankrupt everybody, when the funny thing is I'm going to bankrupt you. So now Lucifer has a choice, because all that stuff that he's been stealing and bankrupting, God has already got him by the balls. He's saying, oh yeah, you own that? Over God's dead body, he owns that, because now Lucifer has a choice. So now God is like basically putting Lucifer on the fence of, well, what are you gonna choose? Do you want to own that, or do you want me to come collect on you? What are we gonna do? So of course, what I figure is gonna happen, Lucifer's gonna drop everything. He's gonna give it all up because God's got too much on him to where he can own more, because it's a game of who owns more points and who has to pay out more. So God is already sitting there like, all right, well, you wanted it to go down to whoever has the most money, and well, you only have $100 trillion, but I have 100 quadrillion bazillion times the amount that you have. So I bankrupted you, and now I get to fucking punish you, as opposed to, because it would have been either way or the other. Lucifer was going to punish God if Lucifer was right, if he would have been able to bankrupt everybody. But now, since God bankrupted Lucifer, now God gets to punish Lucifer. So now God is sitting there saying, all right, well, I'm still making more money than you, and I'm still going to, because that's all God's doing right now. Everyone's wondering, well, what is God waiting for? Well, God, too, can play Lucifer's fucking game of putting people into debt. And because the longer that Lucifer goes against God and keeps fighting God, the more he owes him. And God is just loving it. He's milking it. He's sitting there saying, you owe me every goddamn second that this shit keeps going on, because you're stupid enough to think that you were going to have a fucking chance on making money on me. You thought you were going to make money on me when I'm going to be making all this money on you. So God is just loving this shit because he's making money. He's sitting there making so much goddamn money off of Lucifer every single fucking day. Every single fucking day that God keeps sitting back, letting Lucifer keep fucking shit up, he owes more. And he is loving it. He is loving that shit. And he's just gonna fucking keep milking it. He's gonna milk that shit and milk that shit. And I think it's funny because I'm against any sort of people that are against war, or I mean people that are against or people that are violent and destructive in nature and murderous and warful. I'm against that stuff when I understand this sort of concept and principality of nature. So I think it's funny because God is sitting there waiting. He's still waiting. Oh, I can add up as much debt as you want. So yeah. Anyway, I think it's funny because we're talking about any sort of these criminals that are running around potentially killing people that are going to have to pay back the creator on due come judgment day. Same with Lucifer. So it's absolutely the fun because no one was supposed to figure anything out. No one was supposed to know anything. Of course, God knows all simulations, so he made sure that somebody was going to be able to figure it out and put it into words of what I'm doing. So it was going to be anybody. I mean, out of billions of people, it just had to have been one person to explain it in full detail. So, anyway, there really isn't too much to understand about it because it's all, when you're dealing with a criminal, they don't want you to know that sort of information about them. That's why nobody really understands how is Lucifer doing all this and causing all this trouble and where is he at and why can't nobody see him. It's because that's how criminals operate. They got to make sure that nobody really figures out what's actually going on. So they really got to put a balance between how much they show you. So this entire time everyone's been hearing about Lucifer and Satan. It's been so obvious, oh man, Satan's down here causing all this war, but no one could really fully understand it, is because he's got to kind of make it a mystery to where, he can't make it so no one really figures it all out. So that's how God always existed and how he knows everything, basically. It's absolutely the most insane thing. Just for the simple fact that Lucifer took into a whole argument on trying to tell God he didn't know everything. It's like, how stupid would somebody have to be to try to argue to somebody who was capable of doing everything that he was already capable of doing, saying that they didn't know something that they knew? And that's the whole reason that this shit is going on. And now we finally know that God does know everything, and Lucifer was wrong. When Lucifer was saying that God doesn't know everything, Lucifer was wrong. God does know everything. So how fucking stupid is that son of a bitch for fucking running his mouth off telling him that he doesn't know everything? When, how else is he gonna be able to argue and say, hey, I know everything, when he knows, when he's been down that road, when he's always existed? Lucifer's trying to say, no, he doesn't know everything. No, he did not always exist. Who's Lucifer to fucking argue and say that God didn't always exist or God doesn't know everything? The stupid fucking piece of shit was proven wrong. Because he was wrong. Because he's a stupid fucking piece of shit. Because all he wanted to do was make money on everybody. He wanted to be the richest motherfucker on the block. And now, what happened? God had to bitch slap him and said, guess what? If we go down to playing the whole game of who's going to be the richest motherfucker on the block, I'm always going to be the richest motherfucker on the block with the most money calling the shots. Because Lucifer knows whoever has all the money calls the shots. So Lucifer was just waiting to be sitting there like, I have all the money, I'm calling all the shots. And then God was just sitting there like, no, you do not have all the money, and you are not calling all the shots because I have all the money, and I'm calling all the shots. And Lucifer was trying to keep it a secret this whole time of, oh, I'm going to keep it a secret that I'm going to become the richest person to ever exist. And then God was just waiting to spoil and surprise him like, oh, you thought you were going to be the richest person to ever exist, but you forgot that I already know everything and I was going to steal everything that you thought that you already stole. So God just fucked his shit out the water because God just stole everything from Lucifer. Because God don't fucking play. God don't fucking play. Like, if you start a fight with God, dude, you better be prepared to get your ass whooped. You better be prepared to get your shit destroyed. Because he knows everything, and he's always going to come back on your ass with the better plan. And he's always going to be 20,000 steps ahead of your ass. So I don't know what Lucifer's smoking, but he got his shit destroyed, blasted. He is the poorest motherfucker to ever exist. He thought he was going to be the richest motherfucker to ever exist. But God turned that plan right around on him, and now he is the poorest motherfucker to ever exist. Because that's what happens when you start a fight in a war with someone who can beat your goddamn ass. So I think it's funny. I think it's the funniest fucking thing. We got this fucking dumb shit thinking he's so fucking goddamn rich when God just bankrupted his ass. It's the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen.